Hello everyone, welcome to our UX Quickfire presentations. Pekka Kuch is trademarked, who knew? If the link stopped working, that's why. But they were kind enough to say it was okay to do this today. Anyway, we're going to move forward. I wanted to talk a little bit about how we got here. A few years back, Brian Sadolino and myself, who's an instructor over at Tyler in the Graphic and Interactive Design Department, worked together to develop a new class called Mobile Apps and Prototyping. This is an online class, and we developed it because we saw a need for a class that really focused on the UX process, and we decided to steer it towards designing an app for a mobile device. We spent probably within a year planning this class, recording lectures, it's online, doing a lot of research, and it really piqued our interest in UX. I don't remember, 2015 maybe, when it was. At this time, UX had been around, and a lot of our designers and students that were graduating were going into the field while we didn't have any classes that specifically addressed it. So it was really important for us to get this on the books. And since it's really crept its way into all of our curriculum, it's kind of impossible to learn about graphic design without learning about user experience, research and design, and UI. Everything kind of connects. So we do a lot more of it in our department these days, and that's kind of why we ended up here. Let me tell a little more of the story. Myself and Dermot McCormick, who was unable to be here today due to a family emergency, got together sometime last year and started talking about organizing some type of event. We were thinking big. We thought, let's do a UX conference. And we got really excited about the idea of bringing some experts to campus and getting everyone together on campus across the whole university to talk about user experience and see what they're doing. Next up came Cindy Levitt, and I was fortunate enough to go out to Adobe Max last year, and Cindy and I presented there, and so I got to talk to her nonstop for a few days, probably talked her ear off, and told her a little about what we were doing, and she was like, we have so many people at Temple that would be interested in this, and when we get back, I'm going to introduce you to some people. So she introduced us to Meg and the team over at Strategic Communications. We started having some meetings over there, talking about kind of what we were thinking, and we have a lot of ideas. We're on this amazing research university with so many expertise. Isn't there an opportunity for people from different disciplines to get together and create some type of program? Just a suggestion of classes for students that are interested in UX. So we started talking with their team. They're amazing. They did a ton of research for us, showing us who's doing what in this, who's doing conferences in Philly, what national conferences look like, international, also who has programs in UX. We have a lot of information. Again, we talked to them about doing our own conference, shooting high. Then we said, why don't we start out small? Why don't we do some type of day where people can share what they're doing on campus, where we can bring in some of our alumni who are working in the field, kind of gauge the interest, see if we can fill this room up with folks that are interested. We're lucky we're going to be recording this. We'll be able to share it around for those who couldn't be here, and kind of see if there is enough interest out there for us to do something more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the format, and then we're going to jump right in. For those who came in a few seconds late, just so you know, we are getting lunch. It wasn't a lie. Pizza's getting delivered around 11:30, so what I'd ask you guys to do is if it's mid-presentation, it's going to smell really good for a few minutes, and you're going to have to resist getting up. We'll pause between the presentations so everyone can grab a few slices, grab a drink, sit back down, and enjoy the rest of the presentations. So the proposed style is 10 presenters, which is where the UX10 came from. And each presenter has 20 slides. We have a few teams of presenters here as well. And each slide will display for 20 seconds. But we're in academia, and people want to do what they want to do. So a few of the presentations are 10 slides in 40 seconds, and we have one that's 16 slides at 22 seconds. But most are following this format. The slides automatically advance, so part of this style is that you just kind of have to keep going. And people might be mid-thought, and you'll see the slide change, and they'll just keep on kind of talking through it. At the end, we do have some time for some questions, so anyone who wants to stick around and talk to any of our presenters, ask any questions, or if you have any ideas about the other things I shared and thoughts you want to discuss, we'll be here to do that as well. So again, thank you all for taking the time out to be here, and we're going to get started. So Munir, you're up first.
I came in late. Like a punishment for being, and then.
It is. You just have to hit the down arrow and then it'll be on the
Yeah.
timer.
And I've never done this style, so I guess it's like a double punishment. Is it gonna like beep like in the Oscars? You know, when it advances?
Oh yeah. You get pulled off the stage.
Oh really?
Yeah.
And somebody's hiding behind there?
Behind the fern.
Okay. So I guess I'll introduce myself and then jump into the slides.
Perfect. Yeah.
Well, you see my title there. I've been at Temple a very long time, as you'll see in my presentation, and I guess I'll tell you about myself is I read Donald Norman's book a long time ago, and that kind of changed my life along with a couple of other books, and I've always come back to that book over the years. So I'll just jump into my story. If you know Don Norman, you know that picture. That's the cover of his book, and that always inspires me. I started off as enjoying programming and software development, and it was very disappointing when people wouldn't use my stuff. So then finding Norman was like, oh, this is the answer. So I still like software development, and what you'll see in all the subsequent slides is a mix between switching back and forth between software development and not. So I will actually jump to the next slide and not allow it.
No, you gotta wait.
I gotta wait? That's the rules? Okay. Oh, oops. So, just to show you how old I am, in fall 1994, I offered what I think was the first user interface design course in a computer science department. And you can see the ugly website and the kinds of things I did, and it was a mix between user interface, because it was called user interface design then, or HCI for some of the older folks in the room. And it was a lot of fun. And what it was a mix of HCI research, you know, how many clicks it takes to do, how long it takes to do certain things. Then I jumped into, I like this format. So then I jumped into website design, because that was the era of the web, and I worked on this massive international project to create something called IIS WorldNet. That's my discipline. And the only reason I have this slide is so you can admire the really horrible graphic, which I did not create, but I fought with the creator incessantly. But I created this thing. See that top where it says there? And I was so proud of creating a button-like icon on the web, but the amount of time I wasted fighting with people was amazing. Then further on, I started looking into software design and creating new metaphors. So that's where the UX comes in. And so this was a project, software project, which actually I got a publication out of, so that's kind of a great combo in which we came up with a different metaphor for collaboration, which is my other area of research. So got a couple of publications out of it, and we should have applied for a patent, but I was too stupid because all of that stuff eventually got implemented in other tools. Again, you can see it just looks so ugly now. Then this thing was another project I did. You can see this all has a 90s vibe, a 90s 2000 vibe, to create my own peer review system. This was an era where everybody was questioning peer review, so this was open peer review where the author would know who the reviewers are, and you'd have an opportunity to discuss your review with the authors. I was able to get a publication out of that. So, you know, for an academic, you can kind of follow your fun and get a publication at the same time, then that's kind of, you know, that's quite exciting. A little bit after that, the timing is hard. A little bit after that, I became a department chair. I had an opportunity. I had an opportunity to start a department in the business school, the MIS department, and then there was a big gap in fun. So that's why I'm showing you this boring. I was looking for the most boring chair picture I could find. And then in case you didn't know that it was a chair, you know, there's a little text there to convince you. And one of the first things I did as chair was, because in that era, 2000, project management, which is such a boring discipline, sorry, was very big. So I sacrificed my user interface design course, which was a mistake. I'm no longer chair, so now I'm back into designing websites. This is a national website I designed on jobs and information systems. I also collect the data, and also I'm getting hopefully we'll get a publication out of it. This one looks a lot cooler. And then the most recent project that I'm working on, which will be on the next slide when it flips, is a software to structure and measure student professional development. And that one has been an odd experience for me. I've already jumped ahead. Because the programming is being done by a colleague of mine, but I just do the UI part of it. And that's what the software looks like. That's one of the pieces of the software. It's a dashboard. So if you're a student, you get points for participating in professional development activities, and this dashboard allows you to see where you are. So working in that dashboard, thinking it through, doing usability tasks, and then figuring out a way how you can kind of both incentivize as well as force students to do something that most of them don't necessarily want to do. It's been a great UX experience because we can't do it, it's too expensive to do it with people. Has to be done through software. So kind of completing the circle, I'm back to teaching UX. It's no longer called user interface design, using the website and a platform that I worked on for the last 10 years. And it's quite a lot of fun. But what's the amazing part is Norman's book is still relevant. It's still a bestseller on Amazon, and I thought I would have to update all the concepts. His examples are a little old, but other than the examples, the book is still very much relevant. Well, the other project I'm working on currently now, along with the student professional development project, is we were able to get a nice donation, about $1.25 million from outside, to create this digital innovation foundry, which is a place where people can work on interesting projects, and we provide funding for those projects, and those could be UX projects as well. So if you're interested, you think of us like a mini grant giver within Temple. So if you're interested in working on some interesting technology projects, then happy to chat with you. So it's like it kind of pushes you and then it kind of pulls you. That's what the format is. But I am ending on time. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I would love to hear what the others say.
Hi, my name is Sid. For those of you that don't know me, I graduated graphic and interactive design this May. So I'm here to talk a little bit about my thesis project. Right. So I was looking to integrate my thesis project with music because I used to work heavily in the music industry. And like I mentioned before, this was my thesis project, so I really wanted to showcase like different parts of me when I was going out into the world, and showing different people like who I am in design and both like working in music. So as we can see, here's me as a 17-year-old working with a bunch of musicians. Creating an app for touring bands was important to me because I used to go out on the road with these small bands and they had no way to self-manage themselves. So doing that, we were able to kind of figure out on my previous experience and talking to friends about what I should do. So, as I mentioned before, a lot of these bands have no way to manage themselves, so I started looking into these different apps that claim to do that for you. However, they're meant for bands that tour arenas, sell a lot of tickets, nothing for the smaller guys that have to go out to these old bar venues and smaller places. They don't know what to do. So I took a survey first of my friends and a lot of people currently working in the industry on what they bring on the road, and lo and behold, iPhones dominated. There were 3 people that used Android out of 30. Also, most of these people did not want to bring technology such as a laptop on the road because it could be stolen or damaged. So after my primary research and identifying the problem, I was able to go in and survey my friends about what do you guys want to see in an app like this. So I ended up just taking like the top, I think 5 functionalities from this graph right here and integrating those into my app, otherwise it would be too large. And once I did that, I started to do wireframing and sketching out a few different things. So here's just the basics of what it looked like. I knew I wanted to be different than those competitors because there were complaints about them being too large and the design not being friendly. So from there, I turned my sketches into a paper prototype. I was able to actually put these down physically in front of me and start moving things around and getting people's opinions on what their user flow should look like. So I was able to get that from a few different people and then compile their answers and compile the different ways that they had everything, and then turn that into what my user flow should probably look like. I created a user persona because this is to help me see who the user should really be. These user personas normally provide a problem that the person is looking for and how my app or my product can help them solve that problem. So a fun part of user experience is bribing all of your friends to sit there and do your user testing for you. So I got to put these out in front of different friends and students in the class, and then again record how they were moving things around. At the end, I averaged this, took pictures, and recorded it so I could see, okay, one person did this, another person did that, here's the average of it. And then I went on to different UI decisions. I knew I wanted a dark interface because you're gonna be in a dark venue. You don't want a bright screen hitting you in the face when you've been in the dark for so long. So we played a little bit with the dark side of things. This is before iOS 13, and you could put yourself in dark mode. From there, I moved on to different UX challenges. I really wanted to use that hamburger menu because it's so nice and clean and gives me more space to design. It just wasn't practical because I didn't have enough content for this. So I ended up going with the bottom home menu and was pretty happy with it. It just laid out all the functionalities right in front of you. So once I was finished with my user testing and asking friends to give me like a little bit of a flow, I went into my high fidelity prototype on Sketch. So this allowed me to lay everything out with no branding yet. So I was able to fit in different content where I wanted it before actually seeing what it's gonna look like. And then working with the visual identity, again, I wanted to go dark mode. So I had to choose some basic colors that would work with dark mode yet still contrast well. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see it in a dark room. And then stay simple at the same time and follow this monoline design that I set out for the logo. So I stuck with a basic font and I just used different weights of that font. I didn't want to be all over. Originally wanted to have a slab serif and then talked myself out of it because most apps on iOS are actually full sans serif, thanks to Apple and their love for simplicity. So a huge part of like the user's experience and everything is micro animations between slides. So between these 2 slides right here, I would have the menu pull down and then go back up. I did these in Principle. It just makes it feel more interactive and less like a flat working prototype. So I was thankful that I got to learn Principle while doing this process to animate everything. And then when I was finally done doing my micro animations, I moved into After Effects to do some major animations. And this is what really made the project feel like a tactile product. And it didn't feel like just something that you would see on the internet and be like, okay, this is really flat. What's gonna happen with it? It doesn't look like a real app. So from there, finally finished everything up, got the interactive prototype working. And like I said, with the animation, that was something that I wanted to put online to walk people through this whole process of working with the app and everything, just give them a preview before actually downloading it. And then from there, I worked on a little bit of print collateral just to make the project feel more well-rounded. I felt that in the end, even though I had this massive app that I've been working on for 4 months, I just wanted to add a little bit extra to it just to really push the brand and everything. So this would be some marketing materials handed out to bands, convince them to use the app and everything, give them some free stuff. So after all of this, I wrote up a case study online, and I actually published this case study to Medium. Thanks, Abby. So it was really fun to do the case study, but being an introverted person like I am, sharing my thoughts and process is a little bit strange. But I was able to get that out there, and people were reading it, sending me feedback. It was awesome. And then just a little bit of feedback that I got from this is people started asking me, okay, where can I download this app? I'm like, okay, it's just a prototype, guys. I don't really know what to tell you. And they're like, can you make this? So eventually, hopefully, maybe develop this thing, if I can ever find somebody that actually wants to. That's it.
So, I think before we go to the next one, let's let everyone grab some food as quickly as we can. And then if you can just grab it, come back to your seat so we can keep things moving.
No, I wanted to come down just to do that for me too. Okay. Hey, guys, I got one. So you know a kid named Ben? Yeah.
I think as the line kind of dies down, we're going to speak out if everyone's full with that, so we can make it all happen.
And I'm supposed to hit what? I think it's hit the down arrow.
The down arrow, and then it'll be on the autoplay
Okay.
once you hit down one, and then don't touch it again.
I'm going to try to get everybody's attention, and I'm going to press it. Okay, great. So I am Christopher Hill, Director of Marketing Technology at the College of Liberal Arts. I've been lucky enough to partner with Meg and her team through the years that I've been here several times, and it's great because sometimes UX is very lonely. So it's a very short story about a web developer who, like so many web developers, wanted people to use what they were building, and they weren't using it, and I needed to know why. So I started reading books, and I started finding out about this user experience stuff. Somebody said Don Norman before, and then I realized that we are all a part of the same thing. And I continued to chop wood and carry water and dig holes and make websites and do the work, but I also started to seek out UX, and I found Rick.
Hi, I'm Rick Butler. I'm Director of UX at Bank Mobile. It's a white label bank platform. We have customers like T-Mobile, and they provide their customers with a product called T-Mobile Money using our technology. I head up 3 teams, UX designers, front-end developers, graphic designers, and analysts. I also have a consultancy, Field Day. I work with entrepreneurs and startups around the Philly area, doing customer research, interviews, focus groups, rapid prototyping, concept development, and field studies where we go out and validate that work. But I wasn't always doing this. I kind of found my way into this career. I actually went to school for fine art a few years ago before things were digital. So I studied graphic design, printmaking, and photography, multidisciplinary, had some portfolios when I graduated, and then went out there and started looking for a job. The challenge was when I got out there and I started showing off my portfolio, people were saying, oh, this is great. Do you know Adobe, Photoshop, Illustrator, and Quark? And of course I said, yeah, of course, totally. That's my second nature. And so I quickly went out, opened up a checking account with a $1,200 overdraft, and I bought my first computer for $1,200. So I had to learn quickly, and over the next few years, I would find myself landing an art director role in Chicago, doing brand development, logos, promotions, posters, you name it. But also, my boss was like, hey, take care of all the IT stuff. So I was networking, setting up servers. I started doing backups and optimizing workstations while doing the design. So no surprise, I found myself doing website design in the 90s. Different than Munir's. Mine were a little more gaudy or whatever you want to say about them. But I started doing that. I made even a few applications in Claris FileMaker Pro. It's probably nobody knows what that is, but it was a database program. And I started following this career path into front-end development. So I moved back to the East Coast, and 20 seconds should go a little bit quicker than this. Still doing websites. Is it stuck? Does it seem like it's more than 20 seconds? I think it's stuck. Can I hit next?
Yeah.
Because that's stuck, but this one went forward. Because I actually did more than just that. I want to tell you about it. I want to get to the UX stuff, the good stuff.
It seems to be in this photo.
Oh, that's an animated. paint.
There we go.
Are we there? Oh, good. So I moved back to the East Coast and I landed my first like official front-end developer role with this company, this Liberty Travel. And we were in the process of trying to take our mainframe legacy travel engine booking and bring it online to the web. And we had a big development team, we had developers overseas, and we had a plan. Let's take some travel agents, make them business analysts. Let's follow a process, rational, unified. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. It was the popular thing back then. And let's have the travel agents use Microsoft Front Page, and they can design all the screens. Everything should be great. It'll just come together. And hey, Rick, when all the travel agents are done, take all their screens and put them into a UI. You know, use a tab set or something to bring it all together. Obviously, this didn't work. It was a disaster. We had no idea how to pull this stuff together. We had, the screens were a mess, unusable. Like this code was garbage, right? No consistency. And most importantly of all, nobody was happy. Like, people started panicking. These were business analysts. They weren't designers and front-end developers. We gave them a tool and they just, imploded. The good news was I was reading up and starting to self-educate on human factors, user interface engineering, taking courses, downloading articles, and I was able to kind of craft an alternate plan for the company so we could build a UX practice. Became certified in Human Factors International, and in 2002 I built out a UX team with some research folks, visual design folks, front-end developers. We were doing contextual inquiry, we were doing usability testing, and everything was great. And I moved on from there to some other jobs, and I started to notice this kind of common theme. And the theme was that everywhere I went, that there were folks that worked there that followed a process, whatever it was, agile, scaled agile framework, whatever it was. And they had some principles, beliefs, and values about how that work should be done. This was always kind of preset, and it kind of affected my role in the company because these people and process and principles also included where they thought design fit. Everyone had a different opinion. Where do you do design? And oh, you do the UI, or I was joking earlier, oh, you're the sketch guy. That's a challenge for a UX designer because we're multidisciplinary and we want to affect everything. I just wanted to come here today and share 4 tips that I've learned working in a field that have been super useful with seeding UX. So the first one's awesome. Give me a second. I have to practice my timing here. 4 tips. When you start working for a company, first thing you do is participate. They have a process in place. So participate in the rituals, participate in Scrum, get to know your colleagues, get to know what's important to them, what their beliefs are, and most importantly, their expectations of you and design. This will help you both identify potential folks to partner with and also how to craft your approach to seeding UX. Partner. You don't have to do it alone. There are natural alliances in companies. There's business analysts, front-end developers, stat folks, business intelligence folks. These are natural partners for UX designers. We want their information and they want our qualitative input as well. So the third thing you do is demonstrate. So if nobody knows what you do, you need to show them what to do. Show them how sketching flows can develop ideas very quickly, like within a day, in a few hours, and show them how you can get to a better place faster. Do hallway usability tests and show how directional insight can be design inputs into specific design decisions. I'm sure people will talk about it. But last but not least, facilitate. And that's not running. Oh, that's too bad. This is a time-lapse photography thing. Facilitate. Facilitate collaborative design workshops, ideation workshops, prioritization workshops. Get folks involved in participating in your design process. After all, you need co-facilitators. You don't have to do it alone. And with everyone's help, your UX should take root and be successful. And I did that within 20 seconds, I guess. Do great things. That's the end of it.
If it's animated, it might also be broken.
It's not broken. Anyway, thanks.
Rachel, I think you're next.
There it goes.
Ah, it was loading. All right.
Hi. Well, I merged my intro into my slides, so. I'm Rachel Cox. I'm the graphic designer here at the library. I have a background in illustration. I got my degree in innovation management and entrepreneurship from Fox. And I recently got my user experience certificate from the Nielsen Norman Group. Here at the libraries, we have a few people that, in addition to their regular job duties, also work on a kind of a multi-department. Okay, wait a minute, we do UX stuff. My title of my talk is UX for Parents. These are my kids. This is Oscar, he's 5. This is Ivan, he's 2. I'm gonna basically explain how you can use 9 UX tools in parenting, which I'm looking at the crowd. I feel like a lot of you are not gonna know what I'm talking about. But that's okay. So, as you know, A/B testing, a method of comparing 2 versions of a product against each other to decide which works better, which is more usable, or whatever metric you're using. This is used a lot for email marketing, where you can very clearly send out 2 versions of the same email with the same content and then measure the results pretty easily. I found that you can use A/B testing in anyway. So Odd Squad, this amazing Canadian show for kids where they use math and logic to solve problems. And Teen Titans, this show that's just like a bunch of cartoons that are just mean to each other all the time. Which one negatively affects a 5-year-old's attitude more? That one. So he watched that one for a while. You saw how he acted afterwards, and that was the conclusion. Okay, stakeholder interviews. This is really heteronormative. Sorry about that. But so those discussions with those who are stakeholders, who's impacted by the decisions you're making, who's impacted on what you're building, whatever that is, and people who you need to get their feedback along the way, especially in iterative processes. So that's the same as co-parenting, which is just talking to the person who's there with you in the trenches every night about the most stressful things you happen that day and just like rehashing it, digging into it, and talking about it over again. So imagine doing stakeholder interviews every single night at home. It can be a little intense. And that's also a heteronormative image. Observation. So this is a really basic UX tool, which is you just observe participants in going about their daily business, watch what they're doing without trying to let them notice that you're watching what they're doing. You're not influencing them, so it's a really authentic, organic way of gathering data. Just like going to the playground, seeing how other people talk to their parents. Usually there's like a lot of parents and they're like really patient, and they don't yell and they make me feel bad, and then I'm the one that's like yelling. And but that's okay, because maybe that's something you learn, and I learned that maybe I can try harder and be a little more patient and speak softly to my little ones. Okay, surveying. So we all probably use surveying in our daily life. It's just taking very simple questions on a particular topic and asking as many people as possible about them, trying to get like a general idea of how most people feel on a certain topic. For me, I use this all the time when I email my local parents listserv in South Philly. So for example, in July, my son had this really weird virus. He had, I won't tell you the symptoms, but like they didn't seem to match up with anything. And I just emailed my listserv. I said, who's had this? And like 5 people wrote back and said, yes, my kid had this. It's really weird. And I said, you know what? I don't need to go to the ER. This is just some weird thing. He doesn't have appendicitis or anything. And that was very, very useful. Usability testing is a big one. That's the one we do most often here in the library, where when we were in Paley, we would just set up a desk and we'd have really simple tasks. We would prepare ahead of time, and we'd just get 5 or 10 minutes of people's time, have them do the tasks, and make real quick notes. So you're basically testing out a service or a product by putting it in the hands of real users and observing how it works. He wanted a lizard. I thought, that's not a good idea. Let's test that out. So I borrowed a lizard, a bearded dragon. We had this thing for three days. Oh my God. Lizard poop smells worse than dog poop. They just poop in the cage, and then you've got to like get them out and somehow clean it, and they get it on their feet. And also really boring after 2 hours. He had no energy. Focus group. So so getting people together for a focused discussion on a particular topic. You maybe have questions that guide the conversation. We've only done this once in the library since I've been here. I've only participated in one. It can be hard. It's really hard to not put your own biases and prejudices into the conversation. Moms be focused. This is a play on ladies be shopping. I do know grammar. So anytime you get a couple of parents together, they're always talking about the same things. what my kids eat, how my kids are sleeping, you know, are they potty trained, all these kind of basic things, and you never know what's going to come out of it. Sometimes it's not that informative. Prototyping, so that's when you know, make the most basic, simple version of something to get it into users' hands and see how it does. You could use prototyping and usability testing together, of course, see how it works. But the actual product is the prototype. I'm clearly stalling until the next slide comes. What is prototyping except having kids? This is kid version 1. This is kid version 2. Version 1, won't eat broccoli, won't eat avocado. I have to hold his hand until he falls asleep every night. This one, eats broccoli, eats avocado, and goes to sleep on his own. So I've already made improvements on the first model. And secondary research. So that's just, you know, before you spend a bunch of your time writing tasks, doing all these tools, what else is out there? Maybe someone has done the exact same experiment you want to do. And you can just look at that and either use it as a basis, as a jumping off point, or just use that to make whatever case you're trying to make. So as a parent, the main secondary research is parenting books. There are so many of these, and for me the most important things about them is, does what's in this book apply to me in my particular circumstance or my kid? And can I remember it? Can I remember it? If you can't remember it, it's completely useless. So this book is really good because it's like very basic lessons, and it says if they do this, do this. And the main core of all of these parenting books and all of these UX tools is empathy. The ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And that goes for when you're thinking about the user or the customer, and it also goes for when you're thinking about your kids. If someone is melting down because they don't like the color of their socks, telling them that they're being ridiculous does not get you anywhere. If a user is frustrated because they don't see a button that you can see, telling them they're stupid does not get you anywhere, and it doesn't solve the problem. So the core of UX and the core of parenting is we're all humans, we're all people, and there's really nothing else there but each other.
That was great, Rachel, thank you. All right, my time to go up here now. I'm not going to complain about the format, I promise. So I'm going to talk about 2 different projects that I'm working on, that I've worked on over the past year and a half or 2 years now. They're both kind of research UX projects that are in prototyping phase right now. The first one I'm going to talk about is called Row Keeper. Row Keeper is part of a bigger project called Philly Row that Brian Satellino and Clifton Ford and I are. It's kind of like a love letter to Philadelphia. And a few summers ago, 2018, I received a summer research grant to think about an app for the project. I did a lot of research thinking about what apps were out there that could relate to what our idea is, and ended up landing on an app that's kind of a home maintenance app for Philadelphia row homeowners. There are a lot of those out there, but nothing specific. I offer people beer to come out and do a survey. It always works. Of some row homeowners. I also sent out a survey so I could get more answers from people, just kind of asking, would this be a useful tool? What would you look for in a home maintenance app? I took all that data, put it together, and started to figure out in some type of matrix where the information could live, what was actually doable. Some of the things that people wanted, I knew was not the business I wanted to get in, like finding them a contractor. Not what I want to do. More about what makes owning a row house special, and how can you update it, how can you keep an eye on what's happening in your house. Next phase was doing some sketches. Unfortunately, I was really bad and didn't keep all my sketches, so I have a really low-res version of one. And then some initial wireframes. Being a designer at heart, I jumped into the most fun part of the prototype, which is building an avatar of your row house. It's kind of what you would do before you get in. Thank you, Siri. I took that and kept going, kind of exploring different ways of doing this. The big problem I wanted to solve with this, and I started to do it here, was there's a lot of steps to building a row home avatar, and I wanted to show someone how long this process would take because I didn't know if everyone would be so excited about it as I was. And so finally I came up with this system where at the top you can actually see what steps you're in, and you can go in and you can pick the stories and windows and all the different styles, and you end up with your avatar. And that's where this project is right now. It was kind of the fun bells and whistle part to do, to be able to show off the app and how fun it could be to try to get a little bit more funding to make it happen. The next app I'm going to talk about is an app that I created last semester while I was taking a class, I think it was in the spring, on UX design through Adobe. And the app was happening at the same time I was working with my program head, Kelly Houlihan, on rethinking our curriculum. And I had to do an app and I didn't know what to do, and we had done a lot of research about the curriculum, looking at other schools, looking at who's doing what, and as we're doing this, we keep thinking about how hard it's going to be to make that transition for the students. They're used to how things are laid out now, so wouldn't it be really great if there was some type of app that would be specific for our program and our department that the students could use? So that was the task I took on for this. I started with some card sorting. It's always great when your users are right outside your office door. So I set up what I wanted the app to do, and I jumped out in the hallway. I said, who has 5 minutes for me? And I had the students sit down and start figuring out where would they want information. And they also gave me feedback of what they might want in the app. I did the same thing when I got to paper prototyping. I drew up kind of where I thought things were, and I threw it in front of the students and said, okay, I want you to figure out how to look for this class, and have them actually touch the paper prototype and show me how they think they would find it. Took their feedback and was able to go back and start working on a user flow. So how would the students work through the app? I knew I didn't want to get in at first, like, can this connect to other systems? Because that's a big thing to think about. So I also started thinking about some steps in this and how the students might go through, and the app being more of an informational tool. So not necessarily I use this to schedule my classes, but I use this to plan. Next step was working on some low fidelity wireframes. We also have a challenge in our department, I'm sure everyone does, getting the information about things like this lecture to the students. So we thought if they're going to be using this app anyway to plan their time, we could use it for events, including just advising, which kind of connects to the curriculum. So after that comes kind of your plan, how you organize your classes you're going to take, your requirements. If we do tracks, what tracks you could do. We want to specialize in UX. What are the best classes to take in UX? And then an event calendar. So this is where we could put things like UX10, not Pekakucha event. So this would go here too. The visuals are always fun. Did a lot of research. I didn't need like a real logo, but I wanted some kind of icon for this. We have a dedicated audience. I'm not trying to put this out there for people to use, so I knew that they were already captivated if we were going to try to make this and have them use it. But the trendy kind of X thing was on my mind. Dark background. I came up with this style tile of the look and feel of the app using some photos that we have of our students. We are graphic and interactive design, so using the pencil and the X-Acto knife for the logo, developing a set of icons that's consistent, a nice color palette, and some easy to read typographic hierarchy. And then I was able to take this and then skin my actual app that I had created the low fidelity in. So put it together. Again, it's great to have access to great, beautiful images of work. Throw it in there and show kind of how it works, and in XD able to work on the prototype functionality as well. So they'll be able to go in and you can play around with the app. You can see the new curriculum. It'll be really great if we can develop this. And that way when we do launch the new curriculum, and I know it's not cherry and white, but when we do launch the new curriculum, it'd be a really nice tool for our students to get familiar with it. It'll make it easier really for everyone to be on board. And what's a great prototype without a fun little video to show how it works? So I have a little screen flow of how some of it works, but it's only 20 seconds, so it won't play for the full 30. How an event might work and how you can kind of sort through some of the courses in here. You can open them up and see. So what's next? What's next is that both the projects are kind of at this point. We're attempting to try to get some funding for the Philly Row app, see if that comes through, do a full prototype of the whole app, develop all the content, and then for the curriculum app, I really haven't done much with it because the curriculum takes like 10 years to do, but thank you.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Gary Dawkins. I'm here today to talk to you about conversational artificial intelligence. I'm going to give you a broad view of what conversational artificial intelligence is, and we'll get into a little bit of like the tactical of like how you build conversational AI within the user experience space. So when there's a gap, I'll dance. I'll do this. So my name is Gary Dawkins. I'm a fun guy. I graduated Tyler Art School in 2009. and my portfolio was horrible, so, you know, there's misalignment and no kerning and, you know, spacing's off. Don't be, you know, agitated. But now I'm a conversational AI industry expert focused on user experience in that area. So, by a show of hands, how many people have heard of conversational AI? All right, okay. There's a few we have to educate. All right, cool. So, conversational AI is basically, next slide, I'll dance a little bit. Conversational AI refers to the use of messaging apps, speech-based assistants, and chatbots to automate communication and create personalized customer experiences. So you guys may have heard of Alexa, Google Home, Siri. These are all part of the conversational AI ecosystem, and they help people on a daily basis. So, why do we need Gary if you have bots and chatbots doing everything? My role in conversational AI is to create realistic dialogue and helping chatbots assistants respond to what people are saying to these things. So I'm basically like the human in the bot. I'm responsible for all of that interaction. So, you know, how do you start designing something like this? Well, like with any process, you start with research. No matter what user experience practice you're in, whether that's conventional user experience or conversational AI, you have to start with research and making informed decisions. And then the next process in conversational AI is identifying the intent of what the person is actually saying to the application. So what is the intent? An intent is the intention of the user or the user's interacting with the chatbot or voice assistant. So again, getting down to the root of the problem, this kind of boils down to the research factor. What is the user asking the bot and what are they trying to accomplish? That is the sole role of conversational AI. So, for example, let's say we're building a conversational chat advisor bot. Can anybody identify what the intent of this sentence is? You can throw it out there, you can just yell it out.
Going to Jamaica.
So, the intent of this sentence is,
Buy a ticket.
yeah, the intent is need a flight. Here's another example of an utterance that is common in travel. What time does my flight leave? The intent of that would be flight departure time. So getting down to what the user is actually trying to do is like the core foundation of when we're building a conversational dialogue. So what about the rest of the utterance? Like somebody said Jamaica in December 20th. Those parts of the sentence are considered entities. Those are things that modify the intent of what is happening. So, for example, someone could swap this out for, you know, England, April 21st, and it would pull from a separate API, those different sections. Okay, so I'm also responsible for creating the bot's response. So, as you can see, I need a flight to Jamaica. I'm the person who designs, hey, do you have a preferred departure time? There's plenty of responses you can have for this sentence, but for this example, you know, this is what the response is. So after you've done your intent, you've done your entities, you get into the variations. So now you actually need to program the bot and train the bot to find out how users would actually say this sentence. So these two variances are different ways somebody may ask that same exact question. So you have to come up with a list of those for the bot to be able to then train. So I do have a lot of work on my hands, but there are benefits to conversational AI. Two of the biggest benefits I feel like are accessibility. So for the people who are physically impaired, they can engage with the world. Another area that is really strong is 24/7 concierge service. How many hate when you call someone and it's closed, you can't get what you need? Chatbots are allowing companies to engage 24/7. So if you'd like more information about CAI, here's a few links. I'm sure Abby will send out the document and you guys can just grab these. This will kind of go a little bit deeper than I'm able to give you in this 5-minute segment. And it kind of talk about some of the tactics which are used to actually build bots. If you'd like to stalk me, here's all of my information. I don't post a lot of stuff on conversational AI. I am new to the industry, about a year in, so I don't post a lot about it. But you know, if you'd like to keep in contact to learn more, I also have a conventional UX and research background, so I have information about that as well. So that is my presentation. Thank you for listening. See you guys.
You can probably just go to the next. All right, we started. Go.
Hello, my name is Alex Kim. I'm a current graphic design student under Abby's instruction, and this is a user experience project called Charon. Charon is a funeral planning app. It was born out of the lack of transparency in the funeral industry. I did a little survey, and it turns out that not a lot of people really know how to plan funerals, and even fewer really understand how the industry works. It's kind of a shady industry, and especially if you're planning one, you're probably not in the best state of mind. So all these industries are very cloudy and hazy, and not really many people know how it works. So I started out with understanding how to plan a funeral. I've never done this before. Turns out there's like a lot of things you gotta do. You have to, tell everyone that the deceased is deceased. You've got to reach out to all these services. And so it really helped me to understand the process, and the next step was to send out a survey asking people how many services did they approach, how many services did they actually employ, and how much did they spend on the funeral overall. And I had a little variation between the users. Some people spent between $7,000 and $9,000, some people spent less. And so it actually turns out that many of these people were average to what they spent, the amount of services they applied to. So in 2012, the average price of a funeral was $7,000, and that price continues to go up every year, but the number of funeral homes don't really change. And so I wanted to solve this with three solutions. I ended up choosing one. The first one was a cheaper funeral service. The second was a funeral planning app, and the third was an online will service to help people kind of manage those assets that they have to distribute once the deceased is deceased. That's redundant. So I started out with scoping out a little bit of the competition. There are very few funeral planning apps out there. Most of them are funeral homes and other types of services, but these few funeral apps weren't very user-friendly. They're kind of hard to navigate. They weren't well designed, in my opinion. So I decided to go with Charon. Charon was the mythological ferryman of the river Styx in Greek mythology. He would guide souls from the land of the living to the land of the dead, and I wanted to embody that sort of guiding mentality into this app. So Charon is for the inexperienced funeral planner. In the survey that I researched, about 80% of people are not comfortable planning funerals. So if you look at this photo right here, that's about 4 in 5 people. It's a lot of people that don't know how to do this thing that we will probably have to eventually do at some point in our lives. And so the next step was to start pulling together lots of visual inspiration, how it's going to look, how it's going to feel, how the impression it makes on you once you open it. And so I pulled from many different sources, such as illustration. I pulled from other apps and websites. And the next step was to create the logo, or that one iconic mark. And as you can see, there are a lot of sketches. I only included a few of them because there were, my God, so many, so much failure. It took me weeks. And so I ended up settling with the man in the boat. Yes, this is Charon. And so the next step after that was to start deciding on color, start designing on typography, start designing icons and assets that would stay in line with the brand and keep the overall experience consistent. I also talked to an actual funeral director about things that he foresaw people would need, or consumers would need in the funeral industry. I asked him about trends, and he provided me a lot of feedback on stuff that people would need, like an online obituary service, since it is getting very expensive to put it in print now, as well as other needs. And I took his recommendations and put them into what is called the user persona, which helped me empathize with a would-be user. So this user is Rachel. She has a super captivating backstory, but what you need to know is that she has never planned a funeral before, and she needs guidance as well as education on the funeral culture. And so from that, I wrote down all the functions that I imagine people would want and put them on cards. And I asked people to organize it however they wanted. No prompts, nothing. They just did what they did. And so people started grouping them into ways that they saw fit. And there was a lot of variation in the results. So as you can see here, someone had a more linear mindset, whereas the other person kind of just put them in groups. And it really helped inform the user experience process. So from these results, that should come up soon, I started putting together information architecture. So this would inform me what the user would be presented with, what functions that they would see, and in what order. And it is very scattered. It's still undergoing revision. This is still an in-process project, so there is no finished product. But this is the paper prototype. So it takes the user from the sign-in screen through a short education process that is skippable, and then it starts asking them questions about the funeral they want, as well as different cultures that they might be interested in. It's very rudimentary, but it includes the core aspects of the research. And after that, I started putting together the actual prototype with the brand assets that I showed you earlier. So this is how the app should theoretically look with the sign-in screen and the short education process. I wanted to put huge emphasis on transparency in the industry and on mental health. And so I kept designing, and we'll take you through the how to plan a funeral. It'll show you cultural traditions. It'll ask you questions on the kind of funeral you want to plan, and then it'll recommend you services based on your preferences. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Hey everybody, we're Brian Sadolino and
Jenny Kowalski.
And we're professors in graphic and interactive design. And we're here to talk to you about Outside In, which was a project that we ran in our advanced design class, which is a junior level class, and it's a true collaborative UX design thinking project.
So we worked really closely with Adobe for this project. They have a program they call the Creative Jam, and it's a mix between a hackathon and a design sprint. So over the course of just a few hours, teams of students design something that solves a particular problem. So we ended up stretching this out over the course of 3 different class periods so that our students can have a little more time to get into it. But Adobe was a huge partner the whole way through.
Yeah, so these are the people involved. The top row is Caleb, Jenny, and myself. We're the faculty involved. Bottom row is Rachel from Adobe. She's the facilitator. Our creative consultant, Justin Fraga, and then Julianne, who is our accessibility consultant. And just as a quick note, he is from Disney Disney Interactive UX lead designer.
So Justin really helped us come up with a prompt that was going to be realistic but also interesting, a different kind of challenge. So we were looking at health and fitness tracking for the visually impaired. So that's the challenge we gave to the students, was to try to deal with that problem, because a lot of people who have some kind of visual impairment have trouble working out with gym equipment or running out in the street. So there's a lot of different hurdles to their fitness.
As you can imagine, telling a graphic designer that they have to think about non-visual feedback it can be a problem. So there were a lot of limitations to this project, but also a lot of opportunities too. So what's non-visual feedback look like? The possibilities of a mobile app for caregivers, wearables, we were talking a lot about that, and then also these other features as well.
One of the great things about this project was that it's a borderless problem. A lot of times when we assign a project, it has a very specific thing that it looks like. So you have to design a poster, you have to design a website or a book. So this was something where it was really up to the students to take a look at the problem and try to find the best possible solution for this problem. So it really opened a lot of doors to just look at what the users needed.
Right, so we had the students break into teams, and these were like kind of cross classes, and they broke into teams. We gave them the creative brief the first day, and everybody panicked. And I know some of you were in here. And they started doing research right away and started kind of ideating right away too, and using different methods of ideation, like this.
Yeah, so in the first week there was a lot of mind mapping, so just writing out all the words, all the associations that come to mind to try to find a possible solution, and also a lot of card sorting, so writing out, what do we want this, whatever this is, to do, and try to just sort, what's realistic with the time we have, or what's the most interesting way to show off our solution to this problem.
Right, and so we had, week 2 we had Juliana in, and she is legally blind and an avid fitness nut, and also somebody who uses technology quite a bit. So she was great to have in and give a talk to the students. She brought these great goggles that were sort of allow the students to see what it's like to have visual impairments, and it was great.
Yeah, so this is the second week. In the same week, the students were diving deeper into user personas. So looking at, realistically, who's someone who's using this app, what kind of visual impairment do they have? Is it fully blind? Is it just partial blindness in some way? And also looking at paper prototyping, so drawing all of the screens out on index cards and trying them out and making sure they work.
Right, and the next step would be moving from paper prototyping and sketching into the realm of the digital. And so this is, what you're seeing here is just an XD screen with digital prototyping. You'll notice that it's super high contrast, and one of the reasons why that needed to be is for people who have low visual ability, really.
So because this was a borderless problem, it also allowed students to look beyond the phone, beyond a traditional app. So this is one group's proposal. Some takes on a wearable, so this would be a wearable device like a headband that would use bone conduction, so vibrations that go to your skull that would help direct you to make sure you're running the right way, help let you know if there's an obstacle in front of you. So there were some early drafts there.
And this is kind of a yoga mat that has tactile feedback built into it. So you'd know if you were in the right position by where your hands are, where your feet are. There's also, I don't know if you can see, there's braille sections to sort of provide some more information. Really kind of a smart design idea.
So once the students had these proposals together, we had in the third week, they were presenting them to judges, and the judges were in California and kind of across the country. So we had all the students gathered in one room, and then we had this projector running. So Rachel, our Adobe contact, was running everything from California. So she was kind of on the projector there, and then we had the teams in an office presenting so they could be on a different screen.
Right, so they'd present, and then the judges would give them feedback for about 10 minutes afterwards. We have Justin, who's the sort of creative consultant, was one of the judges. We had a couple people from Adobe, and then in the morning team we had, or the earlier team, we had somebody from Fitbit as well, and the students got to get feedback directly from these judges, which was great.
So there ended up being, based on the judges' feedback, there were 3 winning teams. It ended up being, I think, a first place and 2 tied for second place.
Yep.
So these are the winning teams, and we'll kind of show some of those projects. But it was really the teams that won came out of the presentations that they gave, and then all of the students pushed the ideas a little bit further into more formal case studies.
Right, so the first one we're going to show is called Balance, and it is an Apple Watch or smartwatch app that would allow users to develop a better sense of balance and therefore give them the opportunity to sort of work out or do these physical activities. As you can imagine, people who are low or no viz have a kind of poorly developed sense of balance often. So this is something that could be really great for them.
This other project, Stroke, this was looking for swimmers. So it was a wearable that would send vibrations up your arm to alert you if you were swimming and you were about to hit the edge of the pool, so that swimmers could just focus on getting their best possible time. And it had a really high visibility display so that someone with low vision could still read their time, read their heart rate, read all of those stats.
This is Trail Guide, and Trail Guide is a smart cane and a corresponding app as well. And this had a lot of really cool built-in features, including, haptic feedback, so it will give you kind of direction of which way you're going on the trail, an emergency button just in case. And they actually looked at a lot of different smart cane technology out there, and.
So overall, if we were to do this project again, we would definitely clarify the difference between what the pitch is to present to the judges and what the case study is, because there was a little bit of confusion. Some projects didn't sound as exciting in the pitch, but they had really nice case studies. We would avoid technical difficulties with our projector setup. It got very complicated. Those of you who were there remember that. And we would make it longer and work with more people.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hello, so I'm Emily. I'm a technology projects librarian here at the libraries.
And I'm Jackie Sipes. I'm the user experience librarian.
So we both work here at Charles, and over the last couple of years have worked in different capacities to investigate and improve user experience here at the libraries. So in partnership with other library staff, the two of us have frequently collaborated when it comes to web interfaces and services. As part of the library technology department, I've served as the project manager for the ongoing development of the library search, which is the main search interface that the Temple community uses to navigate our print and electronic collections. Up until last year, we were using some proprietary software for this, but in August of 2018, we launched a new version, which is based on open source software and is heavily customized by a small team of developers and designers in-house. So following this launch, one of our focuses became the upcoming move to Charles Library, which was going to heavily impact how users interact with our collections. This included the physical loading of 1.5 million volumes, including books, DVDs, and more, into the new automated storage and retrieval system, otherwise known as the BookBot, and the need for a process for users to get those items. So in preparation for this, our developers designed a form for requesting BookBot items via the library search, expanding upon other existing request options. This form would relay information to the BookBot, initiating the mechanical retrieval of the requested item. It was critical that this worked as seamlessly as possible given the magnitude of the change. Some of the questions that we had sort of coming into this initial development process were: how do users find and access the request and availability options? How do they interpret the text that they see in the form? And what was going to be the impact on mobile? So at this point, I handed the work off to Jackie and a small team of library staff with interest in UX. They helped to investigate these questions by conducting basic usability testing. In these sessions, the team asked students to do a basic set of tasks, going through the steps of making a request online. This led to a series of rapid updates in August prior to our opening. We updated the language of the form to be clearer. We increased the visibility of the request button itself. And most importantly, I think, we updated the notification messages that users receive. So this had a positive impact on the rollout of the feature itself, but keep in mind that all of this work was done over the summer before users or most of the staff could get into Charles Library. This meant that the UX work that we did was very limited to one aspect of the request, the web interface itself, and did not reflect the full experience of retrieving the item.
We knew that once we were in Charles Library and students and faculty were actually using the request feature, that we would discover additional usability issues. Once we moved in, we finally had a chance to see the request feature in action from start to finish. But requesting materials from the BookBot isn't the only major shift in library services. Charles Library is different from what our users experienced in Paley, and while we want to make BookBot requests as seamless as possible, it's still only one piece of how our users access collections and experience the library. Until now, as UX librarian, I focus primarily on our digital touch points, so working on UI enhancements for library search and working on the design of a new library website. Now that we're here in Charles, my work extends beyond the web to include our physical spaces, collections, and learning spaces. And I'm taking a holistic approach to assessing these things. So this quote from the United States Digital Service, who works on technology related to government services, says that we need to understand the different ways people interact with our services. You guys saw the quote, okay. Here are a number of the library touch points that users may interact with, whether they're booking a study room, scheduling an appointment with a librarian. A user rarely ever interacts with just one touch point. So rather than focusing on just individual pieces, we want to look at everything. So here's an example of what a user might interact with in the library when they are checking out a book. So they may search in library search, go to the hold shelf, pick up their book after they've requested it online. They walk into the physical building, the entrance of the library. Maybe they see some signage and use the self-checkout. But realistically, getting a book may be a much more complex process where the user is interacting with many, many different touch points. So Maybe they're on the library website, maybe they have to go up to the 4th floor stacks to retrieve the book rather than getting it from the BookBot, etc. And though libraries are traditionally user-centered places, we, as individuals working in different library departments, we've often developed services and policies in isolation from one another. So to achieve a more holistic look at our services, I've put together a cross-departmental team to begin doing some of this work. Our first step is to just observe and understand what's happening here in Charles Library. We've been having a lot of conversations with the public-facing staff who work on the front lines and interact with students at the desk. Pretty soon we're going to be forming smaller user research teams and coming up with user research plans. This shows a user research project that's already underway where we are doing observations of how furniture is being used in the building, and as well as surveys and focus groups. And finally, yeah, this is about it. But my hope is that this holistic approach to assessment will allow us to really think critically about the ways our users are being supported by Temple libraries. Right.
So everyone knows this is the last presenter, so if you're on the watch, please sit down and we'll start.
So, hi everyone. My name's Devin. I'm a senior graphic design major here at Tyler, and I'm in Abby's brand identity class. And this app that I created was for her class. So, over the last 2 months, I've been working on researching and creating this app called OvenMade. So the inspiration for this app came from my experience and my friends' experiences learning how to cook for ourselves for the first time now that we're living on our own. And we already knew how to do basic cooking, but learning how to cook regular meals for ourselves was a little bit more tricky. One of the biggest problems that I found that we all ran into was finding recipes. Recipe websites were usually more geared towards older demographics, and there was an overall tone of these recipes, these websites were meant for families, they were meant for older adults, and it made us not really want to look through the website that much. And so some of the biggest pain points I found was it was hard to find good recipes suited for our needs and our palates, and that we don't really have a platform or method to regularly share these recipes and communicate with each other about these things. And on top of that, recipes online are kind of hard to follow for newer chefs. So I went into the websites that currently already exist for finding recipes and found what you would expect. You can find recipes, save them, some you can even create your own grocery lists, but none of them really gave you a way to see what your friends were cooking. It was very individual. So because our generation, our 18 to 25-year-old demographic, we love sharing things. We love sharing what we're cooking. We love seeing what other people are cooking. So I wanted to explore that, as well as trying to find a way to make the process of finding recipes and actually cooking the recipes a lot more easier and more accessible for people who are a bit newer to it. So the first thing that I did was I sent out surveys to some people and got some feedback from people from all different age groups, asking how they find recipes, how they feel about how they find recipes, and how often they cook, do they share it with their friends, and I found that how we find recipes varies a lot. A lot of us find them on Tasty or something like that, and we don't really share them that often. So I created this concept of OvenMade. So it's an app that connects. I wanted to make cooking and finding recipes and sharing recipes much more of a social experience than what it currently is, while also providing like a step-by-step mode and helpful tips for newer users. My target demographic was young people, but after talking with Abby, I found that this app could be useful for a wider audience, so I started to look more into how people who already were comfortable cooking might use the app. So my first step towards developing the brand was to do a little bit more logo research, look into my competitors. I found that my competitors who are up here, most of them had word marks, but then looking further out past that, most of them had iconographic logos. At this point, I wasn't sure if I was building an app or a website, but then, so I kind of looked broadly. Here's a handful of my first logo sketches. I focused a lot on ovens and oven mitts because that's where the name was from. And it was while I was doing these that I decided I wanted to focus more on an app. So I started to focus more on a cleaner and more simple design. And so this is what I ended up on. Through my research, that I also found that through color psychology and all that kind of stuff, using reds and yellows worked a lot better for recipe websites and cooking themed brands. So I created a color palette around that, and I used the rounded corners throughout my brand identity. So going into what the app actually did, I began doing my version of card sorting digitally instead of physically, and I broke it down into 3 main groups. So there was setting up the account, but then there was finding the recipes through search and recommendation, going through the recipe and sharing it with your friends. Then I got into the sitemap, and that broke it down even further into what I wanted each page to do. And this is where I started to talk to my peers, talk to my classmates, have them tell me if what I was planning made sense to them. And so from their feedback, I made a few changes. And then I jumped into the paper prototype. So on the paper prototype, I started to plan out what was going to be on each page, more about the functions, and if everything was really actually making sense. And I found that one of my pages wasn't too clear, so that was a really great step to see if it made sense. So right here you have a zoom in on the recipes feature specifically, and the filters. So for the recipes feature, it gets straight to the point. You see all of the information. And then the step-by-step mode is a full screen voice-controlled mode so that you can ask for help and get the timers, get the steps while your hands are full. So then I jumped into the digital prototype. So once I did the digital prototype, I started expanding the pages a little bit more, added the notifications page, and I changed the social aspect of it a little bit. So right now you could see what your friends have liked and plan out meals with group meals, but then I changed it to be a bit more of a messaging group chat kind of page over, which I'll get to in a minute. And so on the recipes page, like I said, you'll see all of the information. You can also leave comments on reviews on the recipe as a whole, or you can leave comments on the specific steps and interact with those steps. Then when you get to the actual messaging part of it, which is the whole social idea of the app, is that you can send recipes that you like to your friends directly, and they can like and vote on them and see if you like it, and then you can go into the chat and see which ones are the most liked, and those are the ones you can plan to make with your friends. So there's tons of filters. You can search by difficulty, cost. You can see all your notifications, see what people are saying about your recipes that you've made or the ones that you've liked. And then your home page has the recipes you've created, recipes you've saved, and photos you've posted. And so just this week, I started skinning the app, trying to design out the pages. Because we eat with our eyes, I wanted to put a lot more focus on the imagery. So I kept the rest of the app a little bit more clean and simple, kept that rounded corner kind of style to make it feel really new. And that's my entire app.
So if we have any questions for any of the presenters, we're all still here, so maybe the presenters can stand up in the front, and if anyone has any questions. See, for a particular presenter, back there, Nathan.
What's card sorting?
Who wants to jump in?
I'll jump in. So card sorting is a research technique where you try to identify, like, there's going to be another word you probably don't know, but taxonomy. So like you want to make sure that where people are looking for things, they actually go to that spot to find it. So it's like a way of organizing. So say if you had a menu up top of a website and it says food, cats, apples, oranges, like if someone's looking for a cat, you want to make sure the stuff that's for a cat is under cat and not under oranges. Okay. So use organization.
And is the word card like you could just make this all out of cards and move them around?
Yeah, it's traditionally done with cards.
That's where it comes
Yeah,
from.
yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
Anyone else? All right, well, I know we're going to stick around. I want to thank everyone, all the presenters for coming here today and participating. And if anyone has questions, stay around and ask them.